Float Dragon, Alaska. I do love me some Float Dragon. It's what I consider an elevated determination to access really remote Alaska streams to hunt, harvest, and transport big loads of fresh meat off the river. Now at this point there are a lot of different directions I could take this film. However, this video won't teach you about picking a spot, gear selection, remote logistics, shallow stream navigation, or any other Hollywood themes that tend to distract us from the hard, messy reality of our field obligations. Our community still needs help with understanding and practicing proper meat care. Sadly, there's a predictable number of float hunters every season who will either lose meat to bears or mishap, or who will return with all their meat volume in a questionable state of preservation. This video provides a week-long demonstration of hands-on meat care with humidity and temperature threats. I'll start off at our day 3 camp where we had just located some fresh tracks and decided to stay the night to seal the deal on that moose.
Been here a couple of hours, we're just breaking sticks, raking up against this tree, and maybe once an hour. And then come 6 o'clock, I'll start hitting it pretty hard about every 20 minutes, hopefully. There's a bull and a cow tracks in here, and a couple of trees where he scraped.
This gravel bar was positioned at a channel confluence, which I love because moose love, with plenty of open visibility and flat ground for moose to patrol. We had over 300 degrees of potential shooting lanes, all offering us clear vantage of approaching animals. I chose this camp for its fresh sign, concealment opportunity, and predictably stable ground to put down a half-a-ton moose and salvage it comfortably. In case you're wondering, here's my go-to strategy at camps with fresh sign. For a minute or two every hour, I like to break small dry logs the size of my wrist and forearm by smacking them over large rocks or trees. Once those are exhausted, I'll use a fiberglass bull magnet or even my boat paddle. During that calling session, I also scrape and smack willow branches to mimic antlers. This sound carries over a mile and is probably the most effective technique to bring a bull close to camp. Regardless of when I arrive at a new camp, I usually start calling moose around 3 p.m. when bulls are likely still bedded down somewhere nearby. From 3 to 6 p.m. I'll break sticks and scrape willows for a couple of minutes every hour. But once 6 p.m. arrives, and the dogs are both fed and chilled out, calling sessions begin every 20 minutes until dark. On this day, our bull responded with grunts about 8:15 p.m., but from upstream and hundreds of yards away. I'd given up on the encounter because he went silent, but at 9 p.m., Haley was brushing her teeth down by the river and looked up to a bull staring at her at 80 yards from camp.
Well, we just put down a moose, I think, across the river. I'm gonna go over there and shot him at the high bank, just from camp here across the river. Just gonna go eyeball it. It's 9 o'clock, so got a lot of work to do. Okay, there's our camp. And those willows around the front edge. See some bags in the lower right corner. Less than a 100-yard shot. Shot him right here. He spotted Haley and was just staring at her. She was out brushing her teeth. That was the perfect size. Okay, got some work. Kind of a shitty place for a fire because it's mossy. At least it's small. We'll sleep in tomorrow.
Shit, I'm getting hair allergies.
It's hard to do in the dark. He doesn't have any smell of rut. He's about 42 inches. Perfect bull. Well, it's morning of the 13th. About 7 hours after we finished up with that moose last night. Man, I'm all swollen and puffy. My back is hurting. Even for a little meat bull, it's a lot of work, man. It's a lot of work. It's 35 degrees this morning, and the meat is sitting on the gravel over there, getting cool. I'm gonna go check it and have some coffee. Try to get moving and motivated for the day and figure out a game plan. Whew, I love moose hunting, man. I love it. A real common problem is to wake up frozen boots. Frozen boots can be thawed out a little bit. Waders who just want to knock the ice off of them so they're not too stiff to get on. Fill those rascals with boiling water. Stick those suckers right on in for a little warm sauna. Keep you dry but keep you warm.
We clean our raft like this every day meat was on board, no exceptions. Blood sours much sooner than humans can detect, but not bears. I'm also going to use this raft for a vertical shade option over our meat cache. Any blood on the raft will not only attract bears, but also blowflies.
Got some new toys this year to help give me a more definitive temperature zone than that crazy kitchen thermometer. In fact, let me show that. This is what I've been using for 20 plus years. You know, just a probe. You see me use this on all my videos. It works. I still use it, but guess what, man? After I turn 47, 48, without readers, I'm plus or minus 1 or 2 degrees accuracy reading this thing. So Mark Wade convinced me to get one of these electric thermometer laser tools, so you know what your temperatures are on the surface at least. And then got this fancy Klein Tools probe with its electronic, so there's no guessing what the temperature is. I like it. And I also have a temperature and humidity pen. Well, we dropped this meat off at midnight and didn't bother making a ground cache because the rocks were already, you know, in the 30s, high 30s, low 40s. So we just laid him here at midnight so we can get some rest. Top surface is 38 degrees. All right, cool. That's 12 hours post-harvest. 53 degrees. That's roughly 47 degree drop in temperature in 12 hours post-mortem, post-death. For over 20 years, I've recorded data on each harvest to help me understand the real-time transitions of wild meat from the time of death through the field preservation window. These data help me translate science to hands-on practices that hunters can replicate and achieve a maximum yield field preservation strategy in any environment. During the first 12 hours post-harvest, I expect this meat to cool down at a rate of 2.5 to 4.5 degrees per hour, depending entirely on the air temperature and relative humidity. We were fortunate to have had overnight temps below 40 degrees and humidity less than 75%. The initial cooling rate of this meat was 4 degrees Fahrenheit per hour. That also means this meat has already dropped 78% of its heat loss objective in the field. 40 degrees Fahrenheit is the ideal target field storage temperature for wild meat. We stored this meat directly onto the cold stone gravel bar to expedite conductive heat loss. And I also chose not to tarp the meat so that we could maximize heat loss through evaporation and convection. I believe these steps enhanced our initial cooling rate. Now the priority is to, I need to get that meat up off the ground. So make a ground cache with probably some logs, whatever shore debris is washed up in the weeds.
My next task is to establish a shady workspace over the meat cache and get to trimming off anything that is or could be sketchy in a week. The first time you get your hands and eyes on all that exposed meat, you realize how much surface area requires your inspection and removal of unwanted threats. It takes a few hours to be thorough, but time is only one urgency. A meat preservationist's true antagonists are the weather and air temperature. Once the air temperature bumped 52 degrees, a squad of blowflies blew in and prompted the end of our trimming and drying session. We had to bag all of it and reduce the surrounding air temperature by establishing shade and encouraging airflow around the meat cache.
So we're going to get that meat broke from the paddle on the road, I guess. Made one quick modification, rolled up that other sled and slipped them under the raft because this is the prevailing wind side, but it's also the prevailing sun side. So I positioned the meat cache perpendicular to the direct sun that I expect in the late afternoon, what direction. So we'll be able to slide this raft around conveniently on those sleds for allowing air ventilation to get up under that meat. And you can tell that's improved because of all the danglies, the straps. There's a nice breeze blowing around that. And wide open all the way around underneath.
Meat bag rotation fosters evaporation, convection, and drainage to both sides. Air circulation over and around this meat is a powerful tool for cooling and drying, especially during the first 48 hours. I rotate meat bags every 2 hours during this stage and check each drawstring to make sure they're pucker tight. Aggressor number 1 will locate careless openings in any warmer than 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And our meat cache is never more than 30 yards from the tent. Ever.
Alright, we got started to sprinkle a little bit. We're headed to bed, so just layered it all. Scalloped tarps. It's all good. Perfect. Perfect. For 32 hours post-harvest. That's 44. I don't have any problems with that meat. Perfect. %, humidity, 38 degrees by that thermometer. That'd be about right.
At 32 hours post-harvest, my confidence with meat care is secured by a couple of observational data points. The current rate of heat loss has slowed down to less than half a degree per hour, which is a strong indication of a convergence of internal and external temperatures. This is known as the equilibrium stage of meat preservation. Equilibrium is the point where meat core temperatures are balanced with the storage environment. In fact, this meat has lost 97% of its heat loss objective in the field. So this meat's internal temperature should now fluctuate in concert with the air temperature and humidity around the meat. Once equilibrium has been established, any bacteria present on the surface begin its life cycle, and any threats should be mitigated as soon as time allows. When loading a raft, the key is to ensure equal load distribution. The rest you'll figure out by trial and error. Mastering the load might take a few attempts. Antler sets can be a pain in the butt to load, but each one has a sweet spot on the raft that will eventually reveal itself when loading. I should mention the most common field repairs made by renters are caused by the sawed edges of the skull cap when hunters carelessly toss them onto the raft. I'm overly cautious today because a repair would keep us on this gravel bar for another half day. As to how to make it all fit, you'll probably master it by day 3. I prefer to pack in numerous, small to medium-sized watershed dry bags. This bag strategy lends savvy weight distribution on bush planes and the raft.
I feel like we're floating pretty even, I think. Oh, 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 oh,
As far as hunting strategy on the drift,
oh,
I like to float and call around every bend that looks moosey. The frequency of calls is not important since you're drifting a few miles an hour as you call. Your sound bites are also paced like moose walking downstream. If a bull is bedded anywhere along the edge, he'll most likely stand up and respond out of reflex.
hear him. He's stomping the ground. Oh, oh, oh. Paddle us over to the gravel. Oh, 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 oh. The surface of the water is 36 degrees. This hind quarter is 39 degrees. Ribs 37. Back straps 38. Neck meat 41. Dogs have been laying near that one. 38. 38. 38. Ooh, there's a 36er. That's a front shoulder. Nice. I like it.
Here I'm using a bivy tent footprint as an expedient meat tarp / trimming station. My priorities at this camp were to establish a storm-proof meat cache, and I also needed to get hands on the meat to finish trimming any missed spoilage threats. At this point, the barometer is dropping, humidity is rising, clouds are building, and the air temperature is hovering near 50 degrees. I'm predicting that our meat will start to sweat once the humidity climbs above 85%. So while I finish trimming, Haley washes all the game bags so we go into a stormy period with fresh, dry meat bags.
This is the side that we have not cleaned or picked of debris, and we're going to do that today. Let them dry out. 42 degrees, 40, 42, 42, 44, 42, 42, 42, 42, 41, 41. .79% humidity, 52 degrees. Ambient. 44 degrees core temperature. We are at 41 hours post-harvest.
You'll notice at 41 hours post-harvest, the internal temperature hasn't changed in 10 hours, and it splits the middle of the highest and lowest recorded air temps. Equilibrium is confirmed. However, I do expect the core temperatures to rise 1 to 2 degrees during high humidity periods. Before that storm, I still have a lot of hands-on work with this meat. The two major preservation threats I'm mitigating here are moisture traps and spoilage potential. Wound channels, connective tissue, and all the fat gets trimmed as a precaution to encourage surface drying and prevent fat rancidity.
It started raining on us pretty hard. So what we got is layers of tarps for best airflow. Got all that covered under crazy numbers of tarps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's supposed to rain tomorrow pretty hard, so we're just preparing to have to wait out the storm. It's all protected under this nest. Rain's not going to get in there no matter how bad it gets. Perfect. Bring it. Alright, well, it's a rain day. It has rained most of the night and all today. But our meat's doing nice and dry work here. It is 60 hours post-harvest. 41 degrees, 41, 41. Let's see what the core temperature is. $45 degrees, I'll take it. 60 hours post-harvest. It's probably balanced out now to the environment around us. So that's the average daily temperature, give or take 1 or 2 degrees, I would imagine. 66 hours post-harvest. 43.5, we'll call it 43 surface temperature. 48 ambient. 99% humidity. .46-degree core temperature. There you go. Now I've got to rotate this stuff.
Bag rotation is the best time for sensory evaluation. Seeing, touching, and smelling each bag helps me decide what steps are needed to mitigate potential problems.
I'm afraid if I took this meat out of the bags and just let it air under this tarp, that which is the best thing to do, because these bags are wet on the bottom. They've been draining all night, so we got to definitely let that dry out today. And it's right at that temperature where blowflies could become active within 2 or 3 degrees, and I need to be monitoring it constantly. If it starts raining, I can't. So I'm going to rotate for now and watch. Everything else is pretty dry on the bottom. This neck meat's pretty moist.
As predicted, this meat has been sweating for over 24 hours. But until the rain stops and the humidity drops, the surface of this meat will likely stay moist. So more frequent bag rotations are needed to provide air circulation around all the bags. If this meat stays wet and the air temperatures remain close to 50 degrees, mold and yeast could become surface threats.
Yeah. "67 hours post-harvest. .99% humidity. Sweaty. Back straps and tenderloins. We got Haley washed all those bags. Now we got them drying on willows. In half an hour they'll be ready to drop these back in before the dew falls. Let's check the core temperature and see how balanced that is. About what you can expect. 70-hour deep tissue. .47, so it's still balanced out. See what it is after 72 hours. So that'll be, 7 o'clock in the morning.
suspect it's going to get cooler tonight. I bet we see it below 45 in the morning. Okay, I know you're probably bored of all these temperature checks. What's important to highlight here is the past 30-hour period with high humidity paired with sub 50 degree air temperatures. Notice the slight sustained bump in core temperature readings between 41 hours and 70 hours post-harvest. That 2.5 degree rise in core temperature was clearly synced with the air temperature and relative humidity, despite meat surface readings remaining closer to our target storage temperature of 40 degrees. I'm optimistic that tonight's low 40s air temperature and breezy winds should help cool the meat down a few degrees over the next 10 to 12 hours, which, if successful, would closely match the conditions of equilibrium at 32 hours post-harvest. Sometime between the second and third day of meat care, rigor mortis runs its course, and meat begins to lose stiffness. This process results when glucose in the animal's blood cells is converted to lactic acid in the muscles. So when the meat relaxes, I know the baseline tenderness level of this meat has been established. 43 degrees air temperature, 39 degrees surface. 39 degrees surface and raining foggy. 81 hours post-harvest. $43.8. I'll take that. I'll take it. If the meat were to freeze beyond this point, cold shortening is no longer a threat. Alright, we are at our next to last camp, and 86 hours. 86 hours post-harvest. It's hard to keep up when it's been there. Meat's been wet from all the high humidity, just sweaty. So we're not going to keep them in bags today. We're just going to let them air as much as we can, as long as the weather allows. Got some skunk coming up there, so who knows what we got going on. Haley's washing the game bags so we can use those later tonight. Got a tarp drying. Start to feel it a little bit after a few days of taking care of meat. On and off the raft, flipping, flopping. But it's alright. 42, 41, 41. Low 40s for everything, surface-wise. Looks like it's 50, just under 52 degrees. And let's see. $44.5. Core temperature, that's not bad. I'll take it. Good use of tarps. Layers. Everything allowing that meat to breeze, boy. There's no sign of a big freeze headed our way. Just mildly humid air and intermittent sunshine. Our top priority is to dry the surface of this sweaty meat. To do that, I'll have to leave all of it exposed to air while the air temps are less than 50 degrees. Well, I've sacrificed my tripod for the meat cache, so I'm going old school. Right now it's just under 50 degrees. We established a breezy meat cache with strategic shade options, staying mindful of the air temperature and blowfly threats around the meat. Truthfully, each day of meat care is merely a repeat of the steps taken days before, refined each time to improve the efficacy of our meat preservation strategies. Mitigation of threats must be diligent and purposeful to render the best quality food from this wild meat.
Getting out of game bags to dry. Haley's washed these, I think, 3 or 4 times already. Got to keep rotating them, keep those game bags as clean as possible. Still drying out. Still pretty moist in the air too, but I'm thankful for that big cloud over the sun, because we'd be smoked out right now at 4:30 in the afternoon. Get that tarp ventilating really high so it can evaporate as much as possible. Improve your airflow to push away that evaporation and moisture. Help dry it out.
By 5 p.m., the air temperature climbed above 50 degrees and the clouds parted, which we engaged by returning the meat to game bags for fly protection and devising vertical shade to preserve the surface temperature of and around the meat without restricting the airflow. My favorite go-to vertical shade option is the Raft because it's expedient, but sometimes a tarp works just as well. Remember that shade equals cooler temperatures, and the temperature around the meat cache affects the temperature of this meat. The greater the diameter of shade around the cache, the cooler the air and rock temperatures will be around the meat. Vertical shade versus a covered meat cache provides maximum airflow, convection, and evaporation while completely blocking direct sunlight.
Alright, so here we are at 91 hours post-harvest. It's 50 degrees outside temperature. Shows 51 at the surface. That one's 47. That one's 47. That one's 48. That one's 48. 48. 48. Okay. And 46 core temperature. 46.4. "93 hours post-harvest, and got them tarped. Layers, loft, coverage. Perfect. Alright. It's 39-degree air temperature. Meat stayed dry last night. 41 degrees, and that is ideal. So this is 105 hours post-harvest, and now that we're over 100, it's just easier to keep track of the hours by days. So going into our 5th day of meat care, so there's no problems there. We're taking out tomorrow. We'll get this meat dry and over to the processors, and we're going to do it to it. And it is 88% humidity. Surprise rainstorm. Noon, otherwise pretty day. So we had to, our meat was airing out. Now I got a wet tarp on top of a wet meat, so it's not pleasant. Next and last camp, we'll hopefully get some rain respite and get on this, getting it dry again.
When loading the raft with meat, I use a small tarp as a drip guard for the raft and the nylon sling. Beyond day 3, I usually need shore debris on top of the tarp to keep the saggy meat suspended to allow drainage and airflow. First couple of days it's much easier to handle while it's in rigor mortis. Weight distribution is critical for navigation. When I stack these quarters, notice that I have the heaviest hind on the bow section and the rest in the center hull section, minus one shoulder in the stern. Once fully loaded with personnel and paws, our draft will be equal and true. The only thing more that I could suggest is maybe avoiding loading everything while the raft is still in the shallows.
Let's go that way. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, go. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, go.
I keep a few meat tarps stashed near each pile of meat, so deployment is quick and easy for rainy spells. By day 4 or 5 of meat care, sensory checks need to be taken seriously. Any spoilage bacteria or enzymatic changes, like bone sour, would likely be detectable by smell or color at this point. Surface changes like mold, yeast, or slime would also be established and easy to spot.
A little sensory check. Oh, smells good.
This meat looks, smells, feels, and tastes like fresh meat should.
.48 ambient. 44.5 deep tissue. Solid.
So I left the moose quarters open to air all night, hoping to continue drying and to maximize cooling through evaporation and convection heat loss.
The final day, with any luck, the plane should be here in an hour or two. I like that temperature. It's a good way to end a hunt with dry meat, despite rain every day. Ambient temperature is 40. You know that core temperature is going to be ideal. Absolutely. Refrigerator status.
Our meat care ended with us being transported to a village hub with a meat cooler chilled to 40 degrees, where our game meat would hang for another 2 days before receiving it for final processing. Understanding the natural transitions of wild meat post-harvest lends a predictable scientific perspective that, when exercised, improves the quality and abundance of the meat we harvest. This knowledge, in my opinion, is part of the collective toolkit that helps us develop practices that make us proactive instead of reactive to new meat care challenges.